Hey everyone, welcome to TYT. I'm Anna Kasparian. Joining us today is Francesca Fiorentini, host of the Bituation Room, a podcast you guys should absolutely check out. Francesca, so good to have you today.
Great to be here. Really rethinking this lame duck period, huh?
Yeah. It's usually the boring period in politics, but as we've experienced, it's anything but. So of course, there's a lot to unpack on the show today. We're going to discuss, questions of the security state. What's the best path to move forward? We're learning more details into who funded what happened last week with the Capitol Hill riots. So we'll give you those details. Just a lot to get to. And obviously that's the big news story of the day, probably the big news story moving forward for at least the next several days. But I did try to include some other important news stories in the rundown today, including what Biden had to say in regard to stimulating the economy under his watch. Some promising statements there. Obviously, I'm a little bit skeptical, but it doesn't matter. We'll talk it out later. I think it's also important to discuss how the surveillance state continues chugging along even without the incident that happened in the Capitol, the riots. So there's a story regarding 24/7 surveillance in St. Louis in the form of basically planes that just fly over entire communities 24/7 and indiscriminately surveil every single person living in these communities. That's a huge problem. Aerial surveillance, we expected it to happen if we didn't fight back, and we're already seeing it happen. So we'll discuss that. And again, that's actually separate from these proposals to beef up national security with additional laws and regulations, which I don't personally think we need. We have the infrastructure necessary to hold people accountable now. Why not use that? But anyway, let's get to all of it. Remember, you can always send us some comments if you're one of our members. You can become a member by going to tyt.com/join. Members help to keep this show sustainable. We wouldn't be able to do what we do without them. So special thanks to our members, special thanks to our Twitch community. Looking forward to reading your comments during our social break. But for now, let's move on and talk about austerity. Well, President-elect Joe Biden, who's known for his willingness to engage in austerity politics, is suddenly willing to set aside concerns about deficit spending in order to help improve the ailing economy. In fact, he issued some of these statements recently. Let's hear a little bit of what he had to say.
We're going to be proposing an entire package, and parts of that package are of equal consequence to people. Unemployment insurance, being able to continue with rent forbearance, a whole range of issues. So that's number one. We think that they all have to be dealt with. The price tag will be high. But as I said, made scant reference to in my opening comments, the overwhelming consensus among leading economists, left, right, and center, is that in order to keep the economy from collapsing this year and getting much, much worse, we should be investing significant amounts of money right now to grow the economy. And that's a pretty wide consensus.
He also mentioned, and I think he's absolutely right about this, that the $900 billion relief package that was passed by Congress in response to coronavirus isn't enough to pull people out of the economic hardships that they're experiencing right now, which I, of course, 100% agree with. And later in his speech, he got a little more specific about where he would direct that money to. We'll get to that in just a second. But Francesca, I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on this, pick your brain, and see if you're, believing where Biden's coming from here. Do you think he's being, sincere in wanting to pass trillions of dollars in, spending to pull people out of terrible economic situations?
Short answer, I sure as hell hope so. because that was a surprising statement, and one that I think we've needed to hear from leaders around the world, right? I mean, the austerity is embraced by the left and the right. It's a consensus. I mean, it's on, neoliberals as well as far right fascists like Donald Trump are super into that. I mean, they're into spending, but only in the form of tax breaks for billionaires. So I'm absolutely heartened to hear that, and it kind of sounds like, I mean, Biden doesn't really, for all the fake platitudes that I think maybe some who were disappointed in the Obama administration received, there was a lot of hope, a lot of change, and a lot of that, and then not so much on the delivery. Biden doesn't really do platitudes that much, which is both kind of like, it can be a little bit of a snoozer, not to lean into the sleepy Biden stereotype, but it can be a little bit like, come on, you need to rally people. But he also doesn't just say stuff kind of just to say it. If he's saying it, it means that there is a huge amount of pressure that his administration, that people that he's tapped, Bernie Sanders, are pushing for this. And man, what a moment, we need this. Millions have been laid off and are unemployed now because of the pandemic. The rollout of the vaccine is, I know we're gonna talk about later in California, is completely stalled. People are hurting. So I'm so glad to hear that it might be more than just the $2,000. It'll be a whole set of programs.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I hadn't thought of that. I mean, Joe Biden was notorious during the Democratic primaries for being kind of like vicious to anyone who questioned him during his rallies or his campaigning. If anyone had a problem with his past regarding Social Security, his effort to cut it in the past, those kinds of things. He had a pretty salty response to those rally goers and seemed to be pretty defiant and unapologetic about his record. So it is interesting to see him, say this, and there is certainly some influence by people like Senator Bernie Sanders, which, to be quite honest, I didn't think Senator Sanders would have any influence over Biden. I mean, I know that he was pushing. I know that Sanders worked really hard to convince progressives who had voted for him in the primaries to back Biden, but Sanders is really happy with the statement. He says the president-elect is exactly right, that this is not the time for austerity politics. We cannot maintain the austerity economics that have allowed the very rich to do phenomenally in this country while working people suffer. And I always highlight this statistic because it just blows my mind, and it really does help to understand the severity of this situation. 8 million Americans are experiencing poverty for the first time since last summer, which just shows you how terrible it is. And to your point, Francesca, tens of millions of Americans are still laid off during this pandemic through no fault of their own. So it's important to mention that. Now let's go to the next video though, because he gets a little more specific about how he would direct this funding. Let's watch.
We're going to have to meet the emergency needs of the American people. I mean, literally, I know you know this, Ken, that people are having trouble just putting food on the table, just having to keep the payment of their car, maybe able to turn the lights on. There's a dire, dire need to act now, purely out of what is a humanitarian need here at home. And thirdly, we're going to, in the third stage of this, the whole story is we're going to have to invest, as I suggested throughout the campaign, in infrastructure, in healthcare, and a whole range of things that are going to generate good paying jobs that will allow us to grow the economy.
So I love that. I think that's the right move to create jobs through focusing our resources on, building our infrastructure, improving our crumbling infrastructure, also focusing on, healthcare jobs that are of course tied to the pandemic that we're experiencing right now. So it appears as though he has the right idea. And when you really take a step back and you look at the bigger picture, first off, having a even minor majority in the Senate is a big deal for Democrats. And then on the House side of things, I don't want us to underestimate the importance of what progressives were able to accomplish in getting those pay-go carve-outs, right?
Yes.
Those pay-go carve-outs, which allow for the House to pass legislation that doesn't require them to rely on, what they have in their budget now, right? Basically, pay-go prevents any type of deficit spending, but progressives succeeded in accomplishing these carve-outs for anything COVID related. And to be quite honest with you, the language for the carve-outs is so broad that it could be applied to pretty much anything that progressives want to implement. But yeah, Francesca, thoughts?
No, yeah, I mean, I have two specific thoughts. I think it's great that we're not asking, how are we going to pay for it? And he's not even dabbling in that language that even Democrats often dabble in, but they're certainly suckered into it by Republicans. Which if any Republican asks, how are we gonna pay for it? I'm just gonna be like, seditionist says what? Cool, that's what I thought. Cause I don't ever wanna hear them say anything, so they can sit right on down. But I also am curious, just generally going forward, how we hold some of the money that's already been doled out in these times of crisis. How are we gonna hold that money accountable in terms of where they went and who it went to? We know that PPP loans have gone to Jared Kushner's renters in his giant and homeowners in his giant buildings in Manhattan, like who protected one job. Like these are the millionaires who got, hundreds of thousands of dollars in loans. So where's the audit? And I believe the Congressional Progressive Caucus has put forward a bill and is asking for a complete audit of the money that's already been doled out. And the second thing is, I really hope that Biden is unafraid to go after that billionaire class. I hope, because hey, but the truth is we do need to rein in their money through taxes and through an equitable tax structure. So I wanna know how we're going to do that, because they're making a killing in this time. The CEOs of Walmart, on all these other grocery store companies, let alone Amazon, to say nothing of Mr. Bezos. But what is our plan for actually creating some amount of wealth simply by creating a more equitable tax structure and holding some of these corporations to account?
Yep. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you on that. Bare minimum would be to roll back the massive tax cuts for corporations and the wealthy under the Trump administration. Trump's notorious 2017 tax cuts for the rich. That's again bare minimum. Roll that back. But there are other specifics provided by Senator Sanders that I want to share with you. NBC News reporting that Sanders said he's eyeing a bold agenda that includes $2,000 in stimulus payments, enhanced unemployment insurance. Those two things I'm 100% in favor of. Access to childcare, I'm also in favor of. Action on climate change, which by the way, as we know, could actually create jobs that people desperately need. Mitigating student loan debt, and investing very significantly in expanding healthcare, including by lowering the Medicare eligibility age from 65 to 60. Now, the 65 to 60 number is not really that impressive. I'm sure it's gonna help people out, but not nearly enough people who are suffering during this pandemic. I would argue that strategically speaking, they should focus on relief bills that are a little more simplistic. So we know that Republicans support the $2,000 direct checks to Americans. And in this case, you would need a simple majority to pass this. So you don't have to worry about Mitch McConnell refusing to bring the legislation up for a vote. Start simple with that, along with the enhanced unemployment benefits. I'm really curious to see if we're gonna see more of these Joe Manchin-like Democrats, the same type of blue dog Democrats that gave us a lot of grief during the Obama administration, his first term specifically. And they need to be, there needs to be backlash against that type of rhetoric, as there was against Senator Joe Manchin after he said that he wouldn't support $2,000 stimulus checks. He actually walked it back quite a bit because there was so much backlash. And the argument I would make to anyone who's like, oh, it's too much spending. No, you know what's actually a lot more costly? Living in a country where you have tens of millions of Americans who literally feel like they have nothing to lose, because that has a lot to do with the instability that we're experiencing in this country. I don't want to minimize the impact of white supremacy in this country. That's a huge problem. But a lot of the unrest that we're seeing is also fueled by people who just feel like they have nothing to lose. They don't have jobs. They don't have the real economic relief they need. So we need to take care of people, especially when they're suffering through no fault of their own. They've done everything right. They've worked hard, and now they find themselves in this situation where they're laid off and aren't getting the help they need. That's why you have so many people who are on board with like opening businesses up prematurely, not engaging in social distancing. Right. It's not just that they're fatigued from the pandemic. It's just everything that comes along with the pandemic, everything that they're forced to do without getting the relief that they need in order to do it. That's a huge problem. And so I like what I'm hearing from Biden, but my point here is progressives need to continue applying pressure, because I don't think that Biden is going to be some incredible like progressive president, but obviously he can be pushed a little bit. I mean, right. The fact that he's rejecting austerity politics is a good sign.
Absolutely. And to be fair, the 60 to 65 or 65 to 60 lowering the eligibility of Medicare, that was part of Bernie Sanders' first year of enacting Medicare for all. He didn't talk about it too much, but it was a gradual rollout. So making progress. It can be a first step to Medicare for all. The thing I think that's really important to remember, and this is for everyone when you're arguing with your conservative, radicalized family members, is that Republicans were historically against any social program that now, if they floated trying to cut, they would be ruined for it politically. Social Security, they were so against Social Security, right? Oh, Medicare, so against Medicare, and both Medicare and Medicaid, they were against these programs. The GI Bill, all of these things that now, if they ever stood up against them, they would be hounded for it. Americans actually do believe in expanding these parts of the social welfare state for the common good, for the health of communities. I think it's on Democrats to absolutely draw a line in the sand. And like you were saying about Joe Manchin, make him the outlier. Don't cave to that centrism, right? Be bold. Don't do the taking away the single payer option of Obamacare like they did in 2009. Don't do that. Stick to your guns, right? And stick to these bold ideas. You will be vindicated in the long run, and the health of the nation will show for it.
Absolutely. Well, let's switch gears now and talk about what we've learned over the weekend regarding the riots that took place in Capitol Hill. We're learning more details into who engaged in this behavior, including members of the military. So let's get right to it. The Army is investigating a psychological operations officer, member of the military, who led a group of North Carolinians to the Trump rally that, of course, devolved into a deadly riot in the Capitol building. So this is a PSYOPs officer within the Army. Her name is Captain Emily Rainey. So she's still in active duty. She's gotten in trouble in the past, by the way, for ripping caution tape off of a playground during COVID. Because she doesn't believe in some of the safety measures that are taking place during this pandemic. But she remains defiant in her involvement in organizing this group of people to go to this Trump rally. I want to be clear that she's being investigated. We don't know if she was one of the people who actually went into the Capitol building after it was broken into. But here's what we know so far. She has spoken to the press and she says that she has not done anything wrong, and she doesn't seem to have any regrets. She says, "I was a private citizen and doing everything right and within my rights." And if you're in the military and you want to be part of a political protest, you can do it as long as you don't go, dressed in military gear, as long as you don't present yourself as someone from the military. She also says that her group and most people who travel to Washington are peace-loving, law-abiding people who are doing nothing but demonstrating our First Amendment rights. Rainey said that she led 100 members of Moore County Citizens for Freedom to the Washington rally to, quote, stand against election fraud, which, by the way, has not been proven because there wasn't any election fraud. I mean, dozens and dozens of court battles by the Trump campaign, and they failed to provide a shred of evidence of widespread voter fraud. She also said that she didn't know of anyone who entered the Capitol and that they were headed back to their buses hours before an emergency curfew took effect. The Department of Defense prohibits active duty service members from sponsoring partisan organizations. It is unclear if Rainey's participation in the group went against Department of Defense policy. So far, 90 people, as many as 90 people, there could be more, have been arrested for participating in those riots. But what's really worrying to me is there were members of the military who breached the Capitol. We know that because Capitol Police spoke to Politico and mentioned that it wasn't just members of the military. I'm not just talking about veterans. There were veterans there, but I'm talking about active duty members of the military who were there, along with off-duty police officers who were also there. So that is, I mean, it's beyond concerning, right? Especially when you look at some of the video of, some of the Capitol Police officers who are friendly with these rioters and insurrectionists.
Yeah. I'm speechless, but it makes sense, right? Like every time you look at radical movements throughout history, but also around the world, right? The line between the military and the police and what are generally called, when we're using our BBC voices and talking about the third world, like are paramilitary groups that absolutely spring off of and are like low-key condoned by government to basically do the stuff that like the actual military or actual police departments somehow don't get licensed to do, which is like, really? They get a lot of license. I mean, we've all seen them get way too much license. So that's hard to believe. But yeah, I mean, I think that there's no question that top to bottom review of both police departments and military, and basically saying, look, they know. It's not like they don't know who the active members of like different militia organizations. Oh, this person belongs to the Oath Keepers, which is actually chock full of former military, a far right militia group. This person's connected to the Proud Boys. They know. The question is, are they turning a blind eye to it, or are they actually rooting it out?
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of blind eye, it's well documented that white supremacists have infiltrated our police departments forever, right? And it continues to be a huge problem. And so, when there are these discussions about what the right move is to kind of at least mitigate these types of events from happening in the future, can we just address, what our local police departments are, what kind of people they consist of? Can we actually do decent background checks? I mean, it's amazing because you look at, and I can only speak for fire departments in California because I have some experience with this because of my partner, my husband for Brett, who thinks it's weird when I say partner. But anyway, the background checks for firefighters is insane. It's out of control. Yeah. Like you have people from the department literally showing up to your building. They interview every single one of your neighbors. They ensure that they're hiring people who have a squeaky clean record. Considering the volume of white supremacists within police departments and policing in general in this country, I would venture to say that they don't do extensive background checks to ensure that they root out people who have these types of dangerous biases against people that they're supposed to be keeping safe.
Right. And of course, we know the history of police unions who consistently refuse any kind of psychological tests on them, which makes no sense because being a cop is a hard job. So you would think you'd want a psychological examination and some assistance if need be. But more broadly, I think the idea that there is a huge crossover between far right militia groups and the military tells you a lot about the American military. It tells you a lot about the mentality that is fostered in the military. It tells you a lot about what the military generally does around the world. It's like maybe we've spread way too much democracy around the world and we got none left for this country, Actually, what's probably more realistic is that spreading democracy looks a lot like what we saw on Wednesday. Violently occupying places we definitely shouldn't be. So it is a broader culture of militarism that we have to go after. But I also think that militarism ends up psychologically wounding. I mean, it's so ironic that this woman worked in PSYOPs because, look, the whole conspiracy theory around Trump winning the election is just a straight PSYOP operation, just mass delusion orchestrated at the highest levels. But the fact is that military men and women and people who serve are severely damaged, that their suicide rates far outnumber the suicide rates of of civilians and people who did not serve. So all of this Blue Lives Matter BS, can we finally put that to rest? You don't care about cops. You don't care about veterans. You don't. Talk to Bernie Sanders, the guy who's been fighting to, expand veterans' benefits for decades. Oh, but he's never said law and order. He never does that. No, because he actually just cares about people. He doesn't care about aggression.
Well, Captain Emily Rainey has resigned from her commission. It doesn't mean that she's no longer in the military. She's still serving in the army, but she has stepped down from her specific role, and she is being investigated. So we'll see how this investigation turns out. But it is kind of terrifying to learn about the pretty high-level people who have engaged in not only this destructive ideology, but they've put action behind what they genuinely believe to be true. They genuinely think that the election was stolen from Donald Trump, which of course, no evidence of. And it does show you that people exist in these bubbles where they're only exposed to certain talking points that are devoid of any type of truth, reality, credibility. But it doesn't matter if all you're hearing over and over again is OAN, pundits, and I'm being very generous and even calling them that, and Fox News people. Well, unfortunately, a lot of these people get persuaded that Donald Trump was the one who was wronged here, even though we had a democratic process and there hasn't been any evidence of widespread voter fraud. We got to take a break, but when we come back, I'll give you the details on what Democrats are planning to do to hold Donald Trump accountable. And later in the show, we'll also talk about some of the surveillance taking place in the country that isn't even in response to what happened in the Capitol riots over last week. So come right back. I'll give you those details and more.
So a lot of progressive office holders are doing something fun. I like fun. They're doing the last 2 years in 2 minutes. Okay, we're gonna try it here. First, I wanna let you guys know about the years before that. Hey, remember we started the Just Democrats here on the Young Turks. It was officially launched on our air, basically by you guys. And then we featured AOC, we featured Cori Bush, and Ro Khanna became the first ever Just Democrat incumbent, all on the Young Turks. Now, the last 2 years have been a spectacular follow-up to that. So let's put the 2 minutes on the clock and do this. Young Turks got to start back in 2002, and I think we've been an important part of the progressive movement ever since. What we mainly do is amplify the progressive voice and candidates out there, and I think we've done a pretty good job. Right now, we're currently #1 most engaged news politics network online, beating CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC, all of them. We're #1 in total minutes watched. That means not only the number of people watching, but how long they watch. We just crossed 20 million followers and 500 million monthly views. Now, why? That's because actually the country's progressive. It's 2/3 progressive. And you guys have allowed us to be your voice, and we're incredibly thankful for that. So what did we do with that voice? Well, let's look at 2019. We went all over the country talking to you guys and the candidates. So we were in Miami, we were in Detroit, we were in Houston, and we were in Iowa. In fact, we were all over Iowa. You guys were all over Iowa, and all of the candidates saw you guys. We had wonderful people speaking, like the one and only Nina Turner at our rallies. Bernie Sanders stopped by, Andrew Yang, Elizabeth Warren. We interviewed almost everyone on the campaign trail, with the exception of Biden and Buttigieg. And we held them accountable. We even did a progressive economic pledge, and so many wonderful people signed on to that. Bernie Sanders, Warren, Marianne Williamson, AOC, the entire entire squad, Justice Democrats, and so many others. Now, on top of all that, we started a show called The Conversation, where we featured so many progressive thinkers, writers, and candidates. And one of the candidates we featured in 2019 was Jamal Bowman. Here comes Jamal Bowman. Then we had an amazing 2020. We hired a climate reporter. Damage Report passed 500,000 subscribers. Young Turks passed 5 million subscribers. We're getting the message out to more and more people. Bernie Sanders comes on in the heat of the primary. He comes on after the election to say what we're going to do for the future. And then Marie Newman wins. Jamal Bowman wins. Cori Bush wins. And then just when you thought it couldn't get any better, here comes Nina Turner. Hello, somebody. And she's running for Congress, and she comes on the Young Turks first. On election week, we had nearly 2 million hours of viewing. We're #1 destination for progressives. You made all that happen. This is amazing. And thank you for those 2 years. What, I went past 2 minutes? Of course!
Viewers had asked for an interview with the TYT lizard. Mr. Lizard. Oh, you changed colors today. Nice. I don't even know how you feel about us. Do you even like us?
Well, you guys made me this awesome house, so I'm kind of in your debt. I was found outside on the street, and you gave me a home. Granted, it was a really crappy home for a while, but then through the power of fundraising, I became a person who has a multi-level Trump-style mansion.
You do. By the way, you never looked better, man. Normally, you're just green or just brown, but today you're in mid-lizard, right?
I'm not very smart. I'm a lizard, so I don't know how the science works. I guess this is just my mood. It's not every day that thresholds like this are broken. I'm just so excited. I can't contain my pigmentation.
And now you're showing it off.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never seen the lizard like this before.
Hey everyone, welcome back to TYT. Anna Kasparian and Francesca Fiorentini with you. Let's talk about impeachment, because Donald Trump might be the first US president ever to get impeached, not once, but twice. So the House is expected to vote on articles of impeachment against Donald Trump this week, and a floor vote can actually happen as early as Wednesday. Now, of course, this is in response to the Capitol rioters and the fact that Donald Trump certainly persuaded them to fight like hell and take action to throw out the results of a democratic process, which of course elected Joe Biden as president and refused to reelect someone like Donald Trump. Now, Pelosi told House Democrats that the House would proceed in bringing an impeachment resolution to the floor this week unless Vice President Mike Pence moves to invoke the 25th Amendment with a majority of the cabinet to remove Trump from power. That is not going to happen. Let me just say already, there are calls by Republican lawmakers to avoid that effort, the 25th Amendment specifically. So really, what I'm seeing as something that could come to fruition, that has some chance of succeeding, is this impeachment effort. But it's a little, okay, so let me explain how this would work, because I think people are under the assumption that this would happen immediately and then Trump is out with, just a little over a week left in his term. They can get this done. The Senate would, hold the trial after the House approves the impeachment resolution, but that is not going to happen. Mitch McConnell is not going to bring Republican lawmakers back from recess in order to hear this trial. And what he's doing is essentially putting the ball in Senator Chuck Schumer's court, who of course will be the Senate Majority Leader as soon as this lame duck session is over. Now, that's a little strange, right? Especially considering the fact that some of the reasoning that we've heard from lawmakers is that, well, Trump is a threat to this country. He's unruly, he's unstable, he might do something incredibly dangerous, even with a little more than a week left in his term. However, the whole point behind this is to ensure that he cannot run for president again in the future, something that's been reported on regarding 2024. With that said, let's hear a little bit from Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez regarding the importance of holding Trump and Republican lawmakers who spread his message accountable for their actions.
Well, I absolutely believe that impeachment should be scheduled for several reasons. One, of course, our main priority is to ensure the removal of Donald Trump as president of the United States. Every minute and every hour that he is in office represents a clear and present danger, not just to the United States Congress, but frankly to the country. But in addition to removal, we're also talking about complete barring of the president, or rather of Donald Trump, from running for office ever again. The process of healing is separate and in fact requires accountability. And so if we allow insurrection against the United States with impunity, with no accountability, we are inviting it to happen again. If a foreign head of state, if another head of state came in and ordered an attack on the United States Congress, would we say that that should not be prosecuted? Would we say that there should be absolutely no response to that? No.
So I also want to give you the details on what the resolution says specifically. So the impeachment resolution argues that in all this, President Trump gravely endangered the security of the United States and its institutions of government. He threatened the integrity of the democratic system, interfered with the peaceful transition of power, and imperiled a co-equal branch of government. He thereby betrayed his trust as president to the manifest injury of the people of the United States. So Francesca, considering the fact that Mitch McConnell is unwilling to bring the Senate back from recess, and they're not supposed to be back in session or reconvene until January 19th, what are your thoughts about the efforts by House Democrats to hold him accountable through impeachment?
I mean, I'm all for it. I'm like, yeah, just please stop the nightmare. The whole time, this entire year, this entire presidency, I've just been thinking about that viral video where the food cart on the tarmac is just going nuts, and like just spinning out of control. If you haven't seen this, it's amazing. And then some dude just like jumps in another vehicle and slams it from the side, and it finally just stops. And that's exactly what we have to do to the Trump administration. Stop it at all costs. And impeachment, I think, is definitely one way to do that. I think that there's 9 days left. I absolutely think he could start another war, or maybe his first, his first full blown. I know he's been drone striking, but so. I think it is a danger to have him still in office. We know that there are also other events or other like protests / riots planned around the country. And so, yeah, the longer he's in office, the more of a danger it is. I am unsure, and I think this is up for debate as to whether or not it seems like he can still be impeached even if he's not serving in office, because that would prohibit him from being able to run again. And look, I said it this morning on the damage report, and I'll say it again. I think that it absolutely benefits Republicans as well. You see, Ted Cruz just gunning for his shot. He's never gonna get his shot. Let's just, spoiler, Ted Cruz fails. But it behooves someone like Ted Cruz to get Donald Trump out of the way so he can get all those MAGA supporters, right? He's deluded enough into thinking that he can, captivate the MAGA base. He can't. They only obey one person, which is Donald Trump, and not even him really. If he actually so-called stops fighting, they'll turn on him because it's a mob rule. But all to say that I feel like this might be one of those things that where bipartisanship might be good to just cut out this cancer that is Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean, and I agree with AOC in that there need to be consequences, because as we've experienced throughout the years, the Republican Party has gotten more and more extreme in what they're willing to do in order to win, in order to advance their own political careers, even if it means jeopardizing people's safety, people's lives, our democratic process. They don't care. I mean, what we saw from House Republicans, but also from Josh Hawley, a senator, was this willingness to still engage in this deception regarding voter fraud, even after the Capitol Hill riots happened, even after people were severely injured, even after it was reported that someone had died, a woman had died who was part of the Capitol Hill riots. He was still willing to engage in that. And so for me, I mean, and I know you agree with this, Francesca. I know because you've said it in the past, not because I'm forcing you to agree with me. It just sounded very forceful, like I know you agree with me. No, but I mean, it's not just about Trump. It's about Trump and members of Congress who enabled his behavior, who enabled his lies, who repeated and regurgitated his lies, not because they genuinely believed that there was an issue with election integrity, but because they wanted to advance their political career and appeal to Trump's base. People who have been brainwashed into thinking that the real victim in all of this has been a man who's been in this insane position of power, who has abandoned them on every issue they claim to care about, who has done nothing for them to improve their economic situation. They're convinced that like the real victim is Donald Trump, and they need to do whatever is possible to throw out the results of our democratic process in order to ensure that he has another 4 years in office. On the Senate side, though, I also want to share that there are some Republicans speaking out, calling for Trump to step down. 2 Senate Republicans, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska and Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania, have called on Trump to resign. Also, the single impeachment article points to Trump's repeated false claims that he won the election and his speech to the crowd on January 6th. I want to go to the last 2 graphics here because we keep citing the speech he gave right before the riots happened. And I think it's important to know what he said verbatim. He said, Republicans are constantly fighting like a boxer with his hands tied behind his back. It's like a boxer. And we want to be so nice. We want to be so respectful to everybody, including bad people. And we're going to have to fight much harder. He also said, we're going to walk down to the Capitol and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women. And we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength and you have to be strong. And as some of these rioters are being interviewed by law enforcement, we're learning that, some of these QAnon believers genuinely thought that Donald Trump was giving them orders to do what they did. And once they had breached the Capitol, once they were in there, they were awaiting more commands from Donald Trump. That's the reason why they weren't covering their faces. They felt so emboldened, they felt so entitled to be there. They genuinely thought that they were doing something patriotic by threatening the lives of others and trying to throw out the results of the election while every single member of Congress was in that building.
And what's so funny about all of this, I mean, none of it is funny, but what's crazy about the Republicans making this sharp turn and folks like Hawley and Cruz and all of the other lawmakers who voted to try and do essentially what these rioters did, but in a bureaucratic level by not validating the Electoral College votes, is that they're participating in a system that already is completely tilted in their favor, one that they have poured endless amounts of money into ensuring that it is rigged in their favor, in the favor of Republicans, in the favor of the wealthy. The Senate is a highly undemocratic institution. The Electoral College is a highly undemocratic institution. Gerrymandering, voter suppression, and yet they still can't win. As much as they game and create the system around their own supremacy, they still can't win. So what do? They resort to conspiracy theories and outright lies. That is how pathetic this party is. And so I think that Donald Trump, and we've said this before, is absolutely the symptom. He's the outgrowth of a very sick party and of a very sick democracy more generally. It's obviously on Democrats too. And as much as I really don't give any medals to Murkowski or any Republican who's like, now very, very late in the game, calling Trump out, I do think that for the future of this country, we need to be fanning those divisions in the Republican Party, because absolutely the line in the sand has been drawn. Democrats need to make sure that every day they're asking their Republican colleagues, which side of this are you on? Are you on reality? Or you are on Dark Lord had the election stolen from him? Like, what are we okay? Because then we can move on and actually, and let me just say finally, the impeachment doesn't mean we stop with Trump. Hey, Representative Cori Bush has a bill to actually force all of these Republicans who voted to overturn electoral college results to resign. So we just beginning with Trump, but we're gonna keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. We got to take a break, but when we come back, we'll discuss some of those Republican lawmakers who enabled Trump, specifically Senator Josh Hawley, because we have some behind the scenes details of what he was up to as this riot was taking place in the Capitol building. Come right back.
Came in late to watch TYT Old School, and I hear Cenk Uygur talking about napkins. Is this the kind of nonsense Anna Kasparian was talking about? Gotta love membership privileges. Gotta love them.
Please have Dave on every 4 episodes or so.
Watching Ben Mankiewicz and Cenk Uygur on Old School talking is exactly like watching Seinfeld and George. I'm not sure if that's a compliment.
Who's on Old School today? Is there one? At Dave Kohler. I hope it's not Brett Ehrlich.
This episode of Old School has killed me. Who knew a conversation about good and bad underwear could be so hilarious and relatable?
Couple things about this video. Dave Kohler looks so badass.
There's more than a 73% chance this Old School will be really funny. Cenk Uygur has been up since 4 a.m., so he's tired. Hence, everything will seem funnier to him. P.S. Remember, food talk, new words, and no or very little politics.
Dave Kohler, enjoyed performance on Old School. Can we please hear about your time as a geologist? One geologist to another?
I appreciate that all these people enjoy it because I know Cenk loves to do it, and he does it because he knows the fans love it too.
This looks like a conspiracy. This looks like a scheme to defraud.
The Bush administration put folks into the regulatory agencies who believed in destroying regulations.
Memories of the Great Depression faded.
They stood on the floor of the Senate day after day attacking what they were trying to do.
They just generated all this junk, took home huge bonuses, and then when it collapsed, they said, oh, not us.
What they ginned up was pure extortion, putting a gun to the head of Congress.
Time and again, they heard the devastation that was happening in low and moderate income communities caused by bankers, by lenders, and they chose to ignore it.
I understood that the SEC was not merely a weakened version of what it was supposed to be. It was an agent of Wall Street.
When no one's enforcing the law, the criminals take over.
Many of you already know that the TYT Army has been officially organizing for the past year. They're making decisions on which candidates and elected officials to help and always coming up with ways to inform people about progressive policies. Now, we want to give a huge shout out to some special volunteers and highlight accomplishments of our TYT Army. In Michigan, State Leader Tara West and Captain Justine Robinson organized the team's first Beer and Politics. How fun does that sound? Look, they thought of this idea at one of their monthly meetups in order to help connect TYT supporters and grow their team's volunteers. Here's what Tara had to say. Our first Beer and Politics event in Grand Rapids was a success. We had 5 new people show up who are enthusiastic about TYT. They all found out about our event through our text bank and they liked the laid back nature of our get together. Looking forward to connecting with them next month and hopefully meeting a few more. Thank you, Tara and Justine, for leading the way in Michigan. To learn more about the TYT Army and how you can help from home or even start your own team, head to tyt.com/army. Check your spam folder for lost emails to stay up to date with our events.
How would I look walking a dog on the White House lawn? Would that be?
I'm Mike Shekels, and I'm the Director of Technical Operations. So if you're frantically tweeting at us that something's broken, thank you, because I'm fixing it. This here is Johnny Greenwald.
I'm Manager of Post-Production Technology. Simplest terms is I deliver the content.
And this is our master control room. We have many, many more destinations than ever before, and we created this room to consolidate it, to make sure that everything's going out is up to standard, so we meet all of our contractual agreements.
Hey everyone, welcome back to TYT. Anna Kasparian and Francesca Fiorentini with you. If you're watching this stream live, please like and share it. It's one of the best ways to get TYT's message out there. It's one of the best ways to help support the work that we're doing. So if you guys could share, it would be greatly appreciated. Now let's get to Josh Hawley and what was going on as senators were in a secure location as the Capitol Hill rioting was taking place. When rioters had breached the Capitol and senators were locked in a secure room for safety, Senator Josh Hawley, who enabled Donald Trump's lies about election fraud, found himself alone in a corner with Republican lawmakers furious with the fact that he had enabled Donald Trump and was the first to raise his hand in the Senate to challenge the electoral votes. Now, here's what we know based on reporting from the Wall Street Journal. One person had spoken to the press saying that it was extremely striking, said a person who was in the room on that chaotic day. For most of the time, he was in a corner of the room by himself with no one talking to him or acknowledging him. In fact, GOP leadership to persuade the 13 Republican, so the GOP was upset with him because he had persuaded, it was upset with Hawley because of what he had done with election fraud and how he was enabling Donald Trump's lies. Now, while they were in that secure room, that's what this graphic is about, GOP leadership was trying to persuade Republican lawmakers, Republican senators specifically, who were planning on challenging the electoral votes once they reconvened to certify the electoral college votes. And so they succeeded in doing that, by the way. Remember, one of the other Republican senators who wanted to challenge the electoral college votes was Senator Ted Cruz. And through the Wall Street Journal, we learned that Senator Ted Cruz, who like Hawley had planned to challenge some electoral results, huddled with him and other Senate objectors to see if they could agree on a plan. Hawley ended up being the only senator to press forward, although he didn't insist on further Senate debate. His objection to Pennsylvania's results enabled the House to debate the election results for another 2 hours. So that's part of the reason why we didn't get certification of the electoral college votes until like 3 in the morning. House members had to debate for another 2 hours as a result of Senator Josh Hawley refusing to drop this ridiculous stunt, which not only enables Donald Trump, but continues to provide fodder for Trump supporters who are convinced that the election was stolen from Donald Trump. And so this has actually led to some Republican lawmakers speaking out, I wish a little more aggressively, but at least they're speaking out and attaching their name to what they're saying. Far too often we've seen Republican lawmakers anonymously speak to the press about either Donald Trump or what Republicans have been up to and how abhorrent it is. But in this case, Senator Pat Toomey didn't hold back and decided to go on cable news to call Hawley out specifically. Let's hear what he had to say.
What kind of responsibility do you hold Senators Hawley and Cruz for what happened on Wednesday?
Look, I think what they're gonna have a lot of soul searching to do, and the problem is they were complicit in the big lie, this lie that Donald Trump won the election in a landslide and it was all stolen. They compounded that with this notion that somehow this could all be reversed in the final moments of the congressional proceedings. So that's going to haunt them for a very long time.
I know you are you are not crazy about what you might consider overreach. Would it be overreach to kick either man out of the Senate?
I think so. I think they're going to pay a very heavy price. What they did was It was technically permissible under the Senate rules. Their voters will decide whether they get another term, and they're both young enough men that I'm sure they would certainly like to do that. So I think it should be left to the voters of their state to decide what their fate is.
Yeah, no, I absolutely disagree with that. 100% disagree with that. We're talking about people who have been brainwashed into believing the lies that have been spread by Donald Trump with the help of people like Josh Hawley. So, let's just wait for the next election isn't good enough for me. And to argue that their part in what motivated the riots in the Capitol will haunt them is such a ridiculous thing to say. No, it won't. No, it won't. The riot happened, and after the riot, Josh Hawley decided to continue with this ridiculous stunt. Nothing haunts him. The only thing that haunts him is his own self-interest and whether or not he's doing enough to advance his own political career.
But the soul searching, Anna, the soul. I guess you have to have a soul to search. That's sort of the nature of it. So it won't be that hard. Just a quick clarification. Didn't Cruz also vote against certifying some of these election results as well? Believe that that's what that senator was referring to right there. I mean, for example, the Houston Chronicle just put out, Ted Cruz's hometown, just put out an editorial statement saying that he should resign. His hometown paper wants him to resign, okay? And absolutely, you're right. There should be consequences, because these people, they've taken down all the mirrors in their homes. There's no like, oh gee, maybe I shouldn't have. No, they are complete political hacks. They're grifters, and they see voters when they see dudes in tactical gear with fisticuffs and like flexi cuffs, like rolling into the Capitol building. Like that is the delusion, and they're along for the ride. They're happy to actually oblige. So no, they have to. I don't care if there are millions of people who believe it was stolen. I know the polls are there. I know that this is a mass right-wing movement. I think no one can downplay that. I know that 75 million people voted for Donald Trump. That doesn't mean that the leadership shouldn't be held accountable, all right? That doesn't mean that we don't deserve better, because people are looking to their leadership. So if Hawley hadn't voted that way, you bet that people would have been like, ooh, yeah, maybe that wasn't such a good idea. Maybe it wasn't stolen if not a single senator is saying that it was.
Yeah, and to be clear, you're absolutely right about Ted Cruz in being one of the Republican senators who was willing to challenge the Electoral College votes. Based on what the Wall Street Journal is reporting, after the riots took place and as these Republican lawmakers were in a secure location, Ted Cruz changed his tone because he was persuaded by Republican leadership to do so. But Josh Hawley decided to go forward anyway. But by the way, let me be clear, Ted Cruz should not be cleared of any wrongdoing whatsoever. If he did change his mind in the final hour, that changes nothing, at least for me. He was part of a group of Republican lawmakers who knew full well that there was absolutely no evidence of widespread voter fraud, who knew that the election process went off without a hitch, and he still decided to go along with Donald Trump's lies because he saw it as advantageous for his political career. And I also want to mention Joe Biden, who also believes that Cruz and Hawley should suffer the consequences, during an election. So what? We just let it go for 2 years, really? We let it go for 2 years until there's another election. You mean the elections that the Republican Party has worked pretty hard to, destroy for many voters, to disenfranchise voters so they can't, take part in this democratic process. Anyway, Biden's take is absolutely wrong. I agree with Cori Bush. She wants every single Republican lawmaker who engaged in this lie to be booted out of Congress. I think that's the right way to do it. And do I think that's likely to happen? I'm a realistic person, and I'm also a very pessimistic person, and I don't think it's gonna happen, but that doesn't mean that it shouldn't. And to just say that this is solely a Donald Trump issue, I think is wrong. We see Republican lawmakers who have enabled the Trumpist tactics and division and hatred in this country, and they should be held accountable as well. Because if they're not held accountable, what does that mean for the future?
Yeah.
If the messaging to them is, you can do whatever you want and there will be no consequences for you. The only consequences you might suffer will be at the ballot box. Not buying it, not buying it. Republican voters, again, after 4 years of absolute devastation under Donald Trump, overwhelmingly supported him in the ballot box. So
it's so unclear what though they want. It's like, I get that
I don't get it.
I get that you think that the election was stolen. I get that you're afraid of socialism, but what are you actually for? Like just a complete authoritarian, militarized state with every black and brown community behind bars. Like, what do you? You're doing a pretty good job of that anyway. But like, it's very unclear what they're for, which is why I do think that Biden is wrong on this, but that having an agenda that is a universal agenda for all people that can be like, this is my federal jobs program, wishful thinking here, that is really good because it is for something and it's not just like we're going back to normal, because normal is not gonna cut it. I don't know when the moment to say this is, but I'm just gonna say it now, that I think that the Republican Party also needs to be investigated on a funding level, on the amount.
The dark money that funded what we saw last week at the Capitol. Okay, how about we take some actual steps in changing the system so that this kind of behavior is a little more difficult to pull off in the future. Yeah, so keep going. I'm sorry.
No. You're absolutely right. The Attorney General of Alabama, Steve Marshall, heads up something called the Rule of Law Defense Fund. That was one of the sponsoring organizations of that Save America rally, which, by the way, if anyone is saying at this point that like, no, we didn't know, it was just a rally. No, you did, because all throughout social media, there was like, well, I've got my crowbar. Oh, I've got my taser. Like, the people were bringing weaponry. They knew that the end game was trying to essentially violently overturn the election results. So all of those, mind you, tax-free, tax-exempt institutions and nonprofits that are constantly funneling, like Anna said, dark money into the Republican Party from the most local level all the way up to the federal government. We gotta do something about that. That was something that Obama advisors said that they completely were blindsided by, and that is a large part of why they lost their majorities in the House and the Senate. Was it both? But like they lost their majorities. They didn't see the way that dark money was already funneling into it, and the way that dark money astroturfed the origin of everything we're seeing on, in nowadays, which is the Tea Party movement, which still exists, has gotten a little crazier than just hanging tea bags off of a colonial hat, which was nuts. But it's been weaponized now. Now those tea bags are just guns.
No, you're absolutely right about that. In fact, one of the organizations that helped organize this is the Women for America First organization, which, by the way, is chaired by a former head of the Tea Party movement. And yeah, they received all sorts of dark money in organizing the riots that took place in the Capitol. So just food for thought. I mean, if we're thinking about solutions to prevent this from happening in the future, there are ways to do it without beefing up a surveillance state that is already pretty beefed up. I think it's a problem that this was planned in plain sight on social media platforms like Parler, and that there wasn't any planning to either prevent it or keep it under control so people don't get hurt. There wasn't enough security clearly for the Capitol building.
At best, and at worst, it was a deliberate attempt to actually stand down.
That's right.
As we know that supervisors, top officials of the Capitol Police, were saying that they didn't need the National Guard. They didn't need help. And so you left, a single Capitol police officer to lure away hundreds of rioters by himself.
Yep. Well, we got to take a break, but when we come back, we'll give you some details into who has been arrested so far, including one of the individuals, at least, who was seen with the flex cuffs. And then later in the show, we'll talk about Melania Trump's reaction to all of this, which is exactly what you'd expect from a person who says she doesn't give a crap about children in cages at the border or Christmas. Come right back.
So a lot of progressive office holders are doing something fun. I like fun. They're doing the last 2 years in 2 minutes. Okay, we're gonna try it here. First, I wanna let you guys know about the years before that. Hey, remember we started the Just Democrats here on the Young Turks. It was officially launched on our air, basically by you guys. And then we featured AOC, we featured Cori Bush, and Ro Khanna became the first ever Just Democrat incumbent, all on the Young Turks. Now, the last 2 years have been a spectacular follow-up to that. So let's put the 2 minutes on the clock and do this. Young Turks got to start back in 2002, and I think we've been an important part of the progressive movement ever since. What we mainly do is amplify the progressive voice and candidates out there, and I think we've done a pretty good job. Right now, we're currently #1 most engaged news politics network online, beating CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC, all of them. We're #1 in total minutes watched. That means not only the number of people watching, but how long they watch. We just crossed 20 million followers and 500 million monthly views. Now, why? That's because actually the country's progressive. It's 2/3 progressive, and you guys have allowed us to be your voice, and we're incredibly thankful for that. So what did we do with that voice? Well, let's look at 2019. We went all over the country talking to you guys and the candidates. So we were in Miami, we were in Detroit, we were in Houston, and we were in Iowa. In fact, we were all over Iowa. You guys were all over Iowa, and all of the candidates saw you guys. We had wonderful people speaking, like the one and only Nina Turner at our rallies. Bernie Sanders stopped by, Andrew Yang, Elizabeth Warren. We interviewed almost everyone on the campaign trail, with the exception of Biden and Buttigieg. And we held them accountable. We even did a progressive economic pledge, and so many wonderful people signed on to that. Bernie Sanders, Warren, Marianne Williamson, AOC, the entire squad, Justice Democrats, and so many others. Now, on top of all that, we started a show called The Conversation, where we featured so many progressive thinkers, writers, and candidates. And one of the candidates we featured in 2019 was Jamal Bowman. Here comes Jamal Bowman. Then we had an amazing 2020. We hired a climate reporter. Damage Report passed 500,000 subscribers. Young Turks passed 5 million subscribers. We're getting the message out to more and more people. Bernie Sanders comes on in the heat of the primary. He comes on after the election to say what we're gonna do for the future. And then Marie Newman wins. Jamal Bowman wins. Cori Bush wins. And then just when you thought it couldn't get any better, here comes Nina Turner. Hello, somebody. And she's running for Congress, and she comes on the Young Turks first. On election week, we had nearly 2 million hours of viewing. We're #1 destination for progressives. You made all that happen. This is amazing, and thank you for those 2 years. What, I went past 2 minutes? Of course!
Viewers had asked for an interview with the TYT lizard. Mr. Lizard. Oh, you changed colors today. Nice. I don't even know how you feel about us. Do you even like us?
Well, you guys made me this awesome house, so I'm kind of in your debt. I was found outside on the street, and you gave me a home. Granted, it was a really crappy home for a while, but then through the power of fundraising, I became a person who has a multi-level Trump-style mansion.
You do. By the way, you never looked better, man. Normally, you're just green or just brown, but today you're in mid-lizard, right?
I'm not very smart. I'm a lizard, so I don't know how the science works. I guess this is just my mood. It's not every day that thresholds like this are broken. I'm just so excited. I can't contain my pigmentation.
And now you're showing it off.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never seen the lizard like this before.
everyone. Welcome to the Young Turks with Anna Kasparian and Francesca Fiorentini, or welcome back to the Young Turks if you've been watching since our first hour. Lot to get to today, lots of stories that we've produced and prepared for you all, but we do have a breaking news story that's worth interrupting our previously scheduled program, and it's a report from Ryan Grimm and Ida Chavez from The Intercept. So let me give you the details on what we're learning now. So new details into the planning and organizing of the Capitol Hill riots indicate that there were actually Republican members of Congress who were allegedly involved in the planning. This is according to Ali Alexander, who claimed that there were House Republicans, 3 House Republicans involved in helping to organize what took place in the Capitol. Of course, these riots resulted in a total of 5 people dying. Absolutely horrendous behavior. You have rioters breaching the Capitol building. Horrific video emerged from that. And we're still learning details into what was taking place behind the scenes leading up to those riots. So I'm gonna go ahead and read from The Intercept and give you some of the details that they found. The head of the House Freedom Caucus, Republican Representative Andy Biggs, for instance, he's from Arizona, apparently helped plan the January 6th riots that culminated in storming the Capitol building. And again, that's according to Ali Alexander, who's the lead organizer of what took place. Alexander is a pro-Trump personality and was the early founder of the Stop the Steal movement. And he mentions 2 other lawmakers, Representatives Paul Gosar of Arizona and Mo Brooks of Alabama, who were also involved. Here's what he said. Alexander says that we're the 4 guys who came up with the January 6th event. On December 8th, for instance, the Arizona Republican Party boosted Alexander, asking supporters if they were willing to give their lives in the fight over the results of the presidential election. I'm sure most people in our audience already know that the allegations of widespread voter fraud have gone unproven. The Trump campaign has lost dozens of court battles because they failed to provide a shred of evidence regarding their allegations of widespread voter fraud. Now, Alexander's claim, by the way, is reinforced by a 4th video from a December 19th rally at the Arizona State Capitol, at which Alexander played a video that Biggs had supplied. And in that video, Representative Biggs mentions Brooks at his rally in the fight. Gosar spoke in person at that event as well. So when we're having discussions, when we're having conversations about not only holding Donald Trump accountable for what happened in the Capitol, but ensuring that Republican lawmakers who enabled him are held accountable. This is what we're talking about. These are people who, it goes beyond like, little hints. It goes beyond implying that people should engage in violence. We're talking about Republican lawmakers, elected officials who, according to this latest report by The Intercept, were front and center in helping to organize the violence that took place that day. And there should be an investigation in their involvement, and there should be consequences, because if there aren't any consequences, they will be further emboldened by that. And I think people are nuts if they think that the violence that broke out last week is the end of it. We have 75 million Americans in this country who voted for Donald Trump, many of whom genuinely believe that the election was stolen as a result of these people enabling Donald Trump's lies. And to just leave it alone and pretend as if this never happened is absolutely, it's an abdication of duty. It's just absolutely disgusting, and I don't agree with it at all. They need to be held accountable, and there should be a full investigation into Alexander's claims.
Yeah, absolutely. The claims that he made on December 21st, this was like in a live stream apparently. And the best part about it is that this, once again, this administration produces just so many Klingon grifters and people trying to get some shine off the, MAGA gravy train of nut jobs. And so Alexander's like, time and again, he's like, well, I'm the one who had the idea. So like it was my idea, which is gonna be really fun if any of these representatives actually seek or see justice, to have them be like, well, it was like Ali Alexander's idea. So I don't even know why you're asking me about it. Like, it's just like, oh really? Did an online like MAGA personality convince you that storming the Capitol and setting everyone up for a riot was a good idea? Look, the first thing I want out of these representatives is for them to go live right now, record a video of themselves saying, no, there was no electoral fraud. No, Donald Trump did not win. Joe Biden won. I don't know why I said that. I don't know, use the Twinkie defense, something. But like, seriously, they need to, step one, correct the misinformation. And step two, let's see if they can keep their jobs. But like, look, Anna, we've been talking since Wednesday, right? That what was happening on the inside of the Capitol and on the outside of the Capitol were ultimately mirror, two different sides of the same exact undemocratic coin. One incredibly violent, the other one, just a ridiculous process to overturn a democratic election. And we knew that there were connections. We knew, okay, there's something fishy going on. What is the involvement with the higher ups in the Capitol Police Department? What's going on here? Everyone was asking questions. There's gotta be links. Well, look, there are links. There they are. Mm-hmm. They were just openly and straight up planning with these rioters.
Now, what I also want to remind everyone about is that following the riots, following word of people literally dying as a result of the riots, Representative Mo Brooks felt the need to justify what took place. He tried to, put like a, argue that this wasn't something. This isn't being interpreted correctly, that there was a justification for what took place. And what we saw was lawlessness. What we saw was brutal treatment toward Capitol Police, who in some of the horrific videos that we saw following the riots were overwhelmed by this mob of people who refused to accept the reality of the presidential election. And so the question now is, first of all, I believe in justice, and so having one person accuse members of Congress of being involved in the actual organizing is one thing, but we do need a full investigation, and we need to make sure we know all the facts and what their true involvement has been. But if they are found guilty, if they are found actually helping to organize the violence that takes place, well, what options do we have? And so we've heard about impeachment or the 25th Amendment when it comes to Donald Trump. But the 14th Amendment Section 3 has been brought up in regard to these members of Congress. And let me read you what Section 3 of the 14th Amendment ratified, of course, after the Civil War reads, no person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of the president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature, or as, it's very thorough, or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may by a vote of 2/3 of each house remove such disability. So there is an option to actually hold these lawmakers to account for their involvement. Again, there needs to be a full-blown investigation into their involvement, how they engaged in the organizing for the riots that took place. And if they are found guilty, if there's evidence that they actually did engage in organizing this, they absolutely should suffer the consequences. But let me be clear about one other thing. We heard the rhetoric coming from Gosar. We heard the rhetoric coming from Republican lawmakers who knew full well that there was not widespread voter fraud, but they decided to enable Trump anyway. Those people should be considered, for Amendment 14, Section 3. They should be taken out of Congress because they don't actually have the best interests of the American people, of our democracy, of their own constituents in mind. The only thing they've cared about throughout this entire process is enabling Donald Trump for their own political careers. That those people are not fit to lead, they're not fit to represent the American people, and they have no business serving in Congress or any leadership role at all, period.
Bye, Felicia. Yeah. Bye, 14th Amendment, bye. Oh, bye. Yeah. Oh, no, 14th Amendment, why don't you get recalled by your constituency? Bye. Like, this is the thing. It absolutely matters that we try and get these fools out. It matters. You got to cut off the head of this snake and the people who, these wannabe snakes who think that they can step into the shoes, who think that after turning on Mike Pence, calling for him to be hanged, after turning on Lindsey Graham, two of the most Trumpian loyalists, that somehow, they're gonna be spared, that Mo Brooks and Holly and Paul Gosar, they're gonna be spared by the mob? No one is spared by the mob. You give more leeway to fascism, and guess what? They're gonna chew you up and spit you out. Thank you for sicking them on America, you stupid idiots. So anyway, I am excited that this exists, and I just wanna lastly say that the fact that the 14th Amendment was put into place after the Civil War, hello people, let's just, let's put the pieces together. The fact that rioters were carrying Confederate flags through the halls of the Capitol building, put the pieces together here, you guys. There is a long and awful and ugly legacy of white supremacy. It's over, pack it up, we're done.
Let's take a break, and when we come back, I will share what we know so far about arrests. People who were involved in the riots, they didn't wear masks, and I'm not just talking about COVID. They didn't feel the need to cover up their identities. They felt emboldened and entitled to be there, and now they're suffering some consequences. So I'll give you those details and more when we come back.
Came in late to watch TYT Old School, and I hear Cenk Uygur talking about napkins. Is this the kind of nonsense Anna Kasparian was talking about? Gotta love membership privileges. Gotta love them.
Please have Dave on every 4 episodes or so.
Watching Ben Mankiewicz and Cenk Uygur on Old School talking is exactly like watching Seinfeld and George. I'm not sure if that's a compliment.
Who's on Old School today? Is there one? At Dave Kohler. I hope it's not Brett Ehrlich.
This episode of Old School has killed me. Who knew a conversation about good and bad underwear could be so hilarious and relatable?
Couple things about this video. Dave Kohler looks so badass.
There's more than a 73% chance this Old School will be really funny. Cenk Uygur has been up since 4 a.m, so he's tired. Hence, everything will seem funnier to him. P.S. Remember, food talk, new words, and no or very little politics.
Dave Kohler, enjoyed performance on Old School. Can we please hear about your time as a geologist? One geologist to another?
I appreciate that all these people enjoy it because I know Cenk loves to do it, and he does it because he knows the fans love it too.
This looks like a conspiracy. This looks like a scheme to defraud.
The Bush administration put folks into the regulatory agencies who believed in destroying regulations.
Memories of the Great Depression faded.
They stood on the floor of the Senate day after day attacking what they were trying to do.
They just generated all this junk, took home huge bonuses, and then when it collapsed, they said, oh, not us.
What they ginned up was pure extortion, putting a gun to the head of Congress.
Time and again, they heard the devastation that was happening in low and moderate income communities caused by bankers, by lenders, and they chose to ignore it.
I understood that the SEC was not merely a weakened version of what it was supposed to be. It was an agent of Wall Street.
When no one's enforcing the law, the criminals take over.
Many of you already know that the TYT Army has been officially organizing for the past year. They're making decisions on which candidates and elected officials to help and always coming up with ways to inform people about progressive policies. Now, we want to give a huge shout out to some special volunteers and highlight accomplishments of our TYT Army. In Michigan, State Leader Tara West and Captain Justine Robinson organized the team's first Beer and Politics. How fun does that sound? Look, they thought of this idea at one of their monthly meetups in order to help connect TYT supporters and grow their team's volunteers. Here's what Tara had to say. Our first Beer and Politics event in Grand Rapids was a success. We had 5 new people show up who are enthusiastic about TYT. They all found out about our event through our text bank and they liked the laid back nature of our get together. Looking forward to connecting with them next month and hopefully meeting a few more. Thank you, Tara and Justine, for leading the way in Michigan. To learn more about the TYT Army and how you can help from home or even start your own team, head to tyt.com/army. Check your spam folder for lost emails to stay up to date with our events.
How would I look walking the dog on the White House lawn? Would that be?
I'm Mike Shekels, and I'm the Director of Technical Operations. So if you're frantically tweeting at us that something's broken, thank you, because I'm fixing it. This here is Johnny Greenwald.
I'm Manager of Post-Production Technology. Simplest terms is I deliver the content.
And this is our master control room. We have many, many more destinations than ever before, and we created this room to consolidate it, to make sure that everything's going out is up to standard, so we meet all of our contractual agreements.
Hey everyone, welcome back to TYT. Anna and Francesca with you. Make sure you guys check out the Bituation Room. That's Francesca's podcast. She has a lot of fantastic guests on there, including myself. I was on there once, not a big deal. But it's a great podcast. You guys will love it. So make sure you subscribe and check it out.
Anna.
All right. Of course, my pleasure. I love your show. It's not easy to find well-intentioned and, more importantly, authentic people in the news world. So whenever I do find those people, I love to promote their work because we need to support them. We need to give positive reinforcement to honest people in this space. So thank you for doing the show.
Okay, I'm gonna cry a little bit over here.
Well, let's save your tears because there's a lot of I wouldn't say happy news, but there are some positive developments regarding arrests for these rioters who breached the Capitol building. So let's talk about that. Dozens of rioters who broke into the Capitol building and vandalized it, caused all sorts of chaos, and threatened the lives of members of Congress are now being arrested. And there's one person in particular that I'm overjoyed about getting arrested because he was seen with flexi cuffs on the House floor. He's been identified. His name is Larry Rendell Brock Jr., and he's a retired lieutenant colonel and combat veteran, which is pretty terrifying. Now, of course, if you have these flexi cuffs in your hand, obviously you intended to use them for something, particularly members of Congress who were trying to certify the Electoral College votes. He denies that, though. He denies that that's why he has them in his hand. Let me give you the details on what he did say, according to the New Yorker. He says that the president asked for his supporters to be there to attend, and I felt like it was important because of how much I love this country to actually be there. I mean, he loves the country so much that he is willing to help dismantle our democratic process to ensure that someone who was not democratically elected serves another 4 years, possibly indefinitely. Because Donald Trump apparently is his daddy, and he's willing to undo what this country stands for just to keep him in office. Now, he was asked why he was holding zip ties, and he claimed that he happened to find them on the House floor and he picked them up. He wasn't planning on using them. It's just such a joke. He tells the New Yorker this: "I wish I had not picked those up. My thought process there was I would pick them up and give them to an officer when I see one. Now, there's a reason why I think he's a massive liar. Brock can also be seen on a video from ITV News exiting Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office suite with a group of insurrectionists known to have been inside. Brock denied this allegation in conversations with the New Yorker, saying he stopped 5 to 10 feet short of the offices when others entered. So he lied about that. And I would venture to guess that he also lied about why he had the flexi cuffs in his hands, which is terrifying, Francesca, when you think about what they intended to do when they were there.
Yeah, I mean, this is something I've been thinking a lot about and sort of wondering if the tune would change from some of these Republicans had someone actually been taken hostage or even killed. I mean, 5 people were killed, including Capitol Police officers, but let's say a lawmaker were killed, right? What they consider important, at least Republicans. I don't think much would have changed. I think they would have found a way to excuse it again and still, oh, it's a tragedy, soul searching and all the things we've heard. But this guy, a former Army lieutenant, showing up in full tactical gear, looking like, just like oh gosh, now I'm gonna forget the movie. Like the American, oh man, what's the one with the puppets? The troopers, Ameritroopers. You know what I'm saying? The ones
Team
by the
America
side.
World
Team
Police.
America, dude. He looks like a Team America puppet. Thank you, Brett. And he's rolling in there, and now he's trying to feign innocence. No, you knew exactly what you were doing. You knew exactly what you were preparing for. And I feel like quick follow-up question. So did you also get a selfie on the lectern? And he's like, nah, man, I missed that. Like these people are at once terrifying and so ridiculous that I understand. Anna, you've been talking about sort of how could anyone not take this seriously? I understand because the packaging is so stupid, because these guys are playing, like wannabe, Fallujah or wherever they think they are that they're not and should never have been in the first place. But like, it is quite serious. And the fact that they represent so many more people who maybe weren't able to fly out or who were crowdfunding the money for it. Yeah, we've got a bunch of right-wing goofballs on our hands and they're armed.
I wish they were just goofballs, but they're incredibly dangerous people. You're right, they're armed. One thing that I don't want us to miss is how Lauren Boebert, who's a far right extremist who just got elected into Congress. She's from Colorado. She was sharing details about where members of Congress, specifically where Nancy Pelosi was, as these rioters were in the building, as they were in the building. So there needs to be a full-blown investigation into what she was intending to do there by live tweeting details about where these lawmakers were in order to secure them, to make sure that they're safe as this was going down.
That is insane. First of all, that the idea that she was live tweeting where other Congress people were at, or was like, and then the other thing, there's one other detail I don't think we've mentioned. Look, Jim Clyburn has said that rioters found his unmarked office and that there was no way that they would have known where it was. Like, how do you know where it is? Because it had no plaque, it had no identification. So clearly they had a map or someone gave them. I mean, I don't even think there was a map of it, but like someone told them where Clyburn's office was. So you're right, they're not goofballs. They have huge backing. We just talked about the current lawmakers who are assisting them.
Yeah. Exactly, 14th Amendment. So let me give you some more details about other arrests that took place. I'm sure many of you remember the horned individual who was pictured in many images. There he is. So if you're wondering whether that guy got arrested, he did. His name is Jacob Chansley, also known as Jake and Jelly. He's from Arizona and he's been arrested. He actually turned himself into the FBI. Others who were arrested include Adam Johnson of Florida, Derek Evans of West Virginia. And remember, these were people who felt emboldened enough to engage in this criminality with their faces like in full view. Like they did not think that they would suffer any consequences for what they engaged in. So identifying them is incredibly easy. In regard to the guy with the flexi cuffs, he had a patch on his jacket or something that revealed who he was. So he was identified using facial recognition technology and by evaluating the patches he was wearing. One of the patches he was wearing was the 706th Fighter Squadron patch. And so piecing together these details made it easy for investigators to figure out who these people are. And yeah, they're now going to hopefully suffer the consequences for what they did. Like, it's important for people to be held accountable. It's important because if we have this system that seems to only brutalize certain people who want to speak truth to power when it comes to police brutality, when it comes to this two-tier justice system, when it comes to legitimate issues that we have in our broken system, like for them to suffer consequences and then to have these people just willy-nilly breach the Capitol building and not suffer consequences, that is an issue. That shows that there are some people who are untouchable in this country, that they can literally do whatever they want, including engage in a violent mob riot in the Capitol building that threatens the lives of Congress members. And if there are no consequences, they'll do it again and again and again, and it'll get worse every single time. And I'm not trying to fearmonger here. This is the truth. We've seen the Republican Party and Republican voters get more extreme in their tactics throughout the years. Yeah. And the reason why is because there'll be some finger wagging, and then aside from that, nothing.
I mean, this is going to be interesting in the next, few months to see what the fallout is from these everyday / not so everyday people. I know folks have already lost their jobs. Good, bye. But what about the police officers? What about the former police officers? What about what are the consequences there? Will there be misdemeanors or are these actually going to be federal felonies, right? This is not just trespassing. You can't just charge these people with trespassing, right? They had absolutely every intention to harm and would have harmed lawmakers if they found them or if the directive from their overlord had come in time. So once again, this is the same building where peaceful activists who were asking for their Medicaid to not be cut, in wheelchairs, living with disabilities, have been hauled out by all of their limbs. So the way that we treat protesters in this country, and there's part of me that's kind of salty. I'm like, wow, you just thought you could waltz in there. Oh, you did just waltz in there, and you didn't get arrested 4 hours. Wow, okay. It boggles the mind, but it, like everything else about this presidency, it flaunts what we've always known to be true, which is that white privilege and white supremacy and male privilege and male supremacy are incredibly real and are not going anywhere, and that there's a lack of accountability on all of it.
I just got a news alert, by the way, saying that the US Fish and Wildlife Service is opening an investigation after a Florida manatee was found mutilated with Trump carved into its back. Yeah, lots of winners in this country. All right, we gotta take a break. Let's do that. We'll come back with more disastrous crap happening in this country.
So a lot of progressive office holders are doing something fun. I like fun. They're doing the last 2 years in 2 minutes. Okay, we're gonna try it here. First, I wanna let you guys know about the years before that. Hey, remember we started the Just Democrats here on the Young Turks. It was officially launched on our air, basically by you guys. And then we featured AOC, we featured Cori Bush, and Ro Khanna became the first ever Just Democrat incumbent, all on the Young Turks. Now, the last 2 years have been a spectacular follow-up to that. So let's put the 2 minutes on the clock and do this. Young Turks got to start back in 2002, and I think we've been an important part of the progressive movement ever since. What we mainly do is amplify the progressive voice and candidates out there, and I think we've done a pretty good job. Right now, we're currently #1 most engaged news politics network online, beating CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC, all of them. We're #1 in total minutes watched. That means not only the number of people watching, but how long they watch. We just crossed 20 million followers and 500 million monthly views. Now, why? That's because actually the country's progressive. It's 2/3 progressive. And you guys have allowed us to be your voice, and we're incredibly thankful for that. So what did we do with that voice? Well, let's look at 2019. We went all over the country talking to you guys and the candidates. So we were in Miami, we were in Detroit, we were in Houston, and we were in Iowa. In fact, we were all over Iowa. You guys were all over Iowa, and all of the candidates saw you guys. We had wonderful people speaking, like the one and only Nina Turner at our rallies. Bernie Sanders stopped by, Andrew Yang, Elizabeth Warren. We interviewed almost everyone on the campaign trail, with the exception of Biden and Buttigieg. And we held them accountable. We even did a progressive economic pledge, and so many wonderful people signed on to that. Bernie Sanders, Warren, Marianne Williamson, AOC, the entire squad, Justice Democrats, and so many others. Now, on top of all that, we started a show called The Conversation, where we featured so many progressive thinkers, writers, and candidates. And one of the candidates we featured in 2019 was Jamal Bowman. Here comes Jamal Bowman. Then we had an amazing 2020. We hired a climate reporter. Damage Report passed 500,000 subscribers. Young Turks passed 5 million subscribers. We're getting the message out to more and more people. Bernie Sanders comes on in the heat of the primary. He comes on after the election to say what we're gonna do for the future. And then Marie Newman wins. Jamal Bowman wins. Cori Bush wins. And then just when you thought it couldn't get any better, here comes Nina Turner. Hello, somebody. And she's running for Congress, and she comes on the Young Turks first. On election week, we had nearly 2 million hours of viewing. We're #1 destination for progressives. You made all that happen. This is amazing, and thank you for those 2 years. What, I went past 2 minutes? Of course!
Viewers had asked for an interview with the TYT lizard. Mr. Lizard. Oh, you changed colors today. Nice. I don't even know how you feel about us. Do you even like us?
Well, you guys made me this awesome house, so I'm kind of in your debt. I was found outside on the street, and you gave me a home. Granted, it was a really crappy home for a while, but then through the power of fundraising, I became a person who has a multi-level Trump-style mansion.
You do. By the way, you never looked better, man. Normally, you're just green or just brown, but today you're in mid-lizard, right?
I'm not very smart. I'm a lizard, so I don't know how the science works. I guess this is just my mood. It's not every day that thresholds like this are broken. I'm just so excited. I can't contain my pigmentation.
And now you're showing it off.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never seen the lizard like this before.
Hey everyone, welcome back to TYT. Anna and Francesca with you. We have limited time. I want to get to as many stories as possible. So let's do it. Let's talk about Melania's reaction to what took place. Melania Trump finally broke her silence in regard to the riots that took place in the Capitol, the riots that resulted in 5 people dying, very serious situation. But the statement that she released leaves much to be desired, which I guess is only expected with the Trump administration and anyone associated with it. She says, I am disappointed and disheartened with what happened last week. I find it shameful that surrounding these tragic events, there has been salacious gossip, unwarranted personal attacks, and false misleading accusations on me from people who are looking to be relevant and have an agenda. This time is solely about healing our country and its citizens. It should not be used for personal gain. No one's talking about you, Melania. No one cares about you. No one's engaging in salacious gossip about you. The Capitol was breached by an angry armed mob. People died as a result. Members of Congress had their lives threatened by these people, who, by the way, were only minutes away from being in the exact same room as them. No one cares about you. No one is like engaging in salacious gossip about Melania Trump. The fact that that's her statement is just beyond ludicrous. Like, what is wrong with her? I would have preferred if she didn't release a statement at all, but it actually gets worse. Before I get to those details, Francesca, I don't know, maybe I'm being too harsh. Maybe that was actually a kind-hearted, concerned statement from the First Lady.
I mean, I don't know, because have you ever tried to decorate for Christmas in the White House? It's very difficult. I mean, it's incredibly hard. I know that it's hard to overturn an election illegally and to mob, but I have been mobbed. My life is a mob. Like, okay, I just love the idea of Melania like outside, like be best, like handing out buttons, like here, be best, before like the rioters go and try and put lawmakers in flexi. Be best, like oh my God, you lady. No one's gonna buy your reality show after this, okay? No. Okay, maybe Spike TV. Does that still exist? I'm glad it doesn't. I'm full of very relevant movie references and television references today. No, Melania, poor thing. You know, I don't know. Was the rose bush better? Is anything better after Melania? Anything?
No. Nothing is better after the Trump administration. Things have only devolved, unfortunately. Look, to be fair, in her statement, she also shared her condolences for the people who died during these riots, and she named them by name. And she did follow that with, I absolutely condemn the violence that has occurred on our nation's capital. Violence is never acceptable. However, as the riot was taking place, there was pressure for Melania Trump to get Donald Trump to do something, right? But she was very busy, Francesca, very, very busy. She was engaged in a photo shoot so she can have pictures of her decorating skills for a coffee table book that she's working on. And that's just a lot more important, you know, than ensuring that a riot is ended as soon as possible so people don't get hurt. Photos are being taken of rugs and other items in the executive residence and the East Wing. A person familiar with the day's activities with the First Lady told CNN. And by the way, I should also note that she just was disinterested in doing something about this. Like, just who cares? Give me a break. Who cares? As she said about children who were locked in cages in the border. Her disinterest in addressing the country was indicative of being checked out, said another White House source, who added, quote, she just isn't in a place mentally or emotionally anymore where she wants to get involved, as if she's ever been involved in any type of fruitful way, really. And I also
it is. I go ahead, Anna. Continue.
No. The final thing I wanted to mention was just that you know, she got a lot of heat during the Republican National Convention in 2016 because it looked like, it seemed as though she had lifted portions of Michelle Obama's speech and repurposed it for her own speech. Well, Kate Bennett reports that it appears that Melania Trump has also copied parts of her statement from herself. So she's just kind of like recycling stuff that she said in the past. Significant similarities between the statement today and the RNC speech from August. And then if you look at this image, it'll show you the highlighted the highlighted section that seems to be repurposed from today, and then the RNC speech. The common thread in all of these challenging situations in America's unwavering resolve to help one another. So exact same line from August used to respond to what happened in the Capitol last week. Go ahead, Francesca.
I mean, that's perfectly on brand for robot stand-in, cold calculating trophy wife that she is and has represented. I mean, this is what's interesting. Like, look, I don't believe, and I'm not really all that excited about palace intrigue and, you know, what's the First Lady gonna do? But do something, like make a mark, have a minimal legacy. Like, you're the First Lady. Like, a program that was successful. I don't know, Michelle Obama got like fruit in Walgreens. That's actually kind of good, Like do some, I mean, in addition to a lot of other stuff, and there's degrees of how much people like Michelle Obama, but like she straight up was like, well, I wore a tuxedo along with my husband. You guys missed this? She and her husband both wore tuxedos at a recent gala, of course, in the middle of a pandemic, no masks. But like that's the extent, is like she was a fashion icon, but she wasn't. And it's all a little bit like the Nazis had fashion icons as well. There was a whole like genre, of women in different looks. And I feel like that's what we saw with Melania's FLOTUS time. But we'll see. I didn't know that it was possible to be, I mean, I guess you have to be cold and calculating to be married to Donald Trump, but wow.
I just can't imagine being in a position to, maybe have some influence on Trump, maybe have some influence to do the right thing and prevent people from getting hurt. And no, her coffee table book, the photo shoot for her coffee table book, pictures of rugs seem to be more important than doing what she could do, right? I mean, who knows if she would have any real impact, but it doesn't matter. She had no interest in trying to have an influence over that situation to prevent people from getting hurt. Didn't care. Who cares? Give me a break. That is the line that I'll never forget from Melania Trump, because not only did she apply that to children at the border, that's just the kind of mentality that she's had throughout this administration. And I guess, I don't know, for people like us, we often think about what we would do to help people if we had the ability to do it. And she finds herself in this position through no hard work, through no merit. And she just doesn't care to have any positive influence. And I just think that's telling.
Yeah, but also it is definitely hard work to have slept with Donald Trump. Okay, let's just be real. Let's be real. That's gotta be a hard pill to swallow. Okay, I'm done. But that is, but you're right. No, she's done nothing to rein in his worst instincts. So,
well, that makes me want to engage in a purge. But let's talk about the Twitter purge that people are so upset about. Took place after the riots, and conservatives are showing their asses. So, following Trump's ban on its platform, Twitter decided to do an audit to get rid of bots, get rid of the accounts that we all know exist, sock puppet accounts, essentially accounts that break the terms of use for Twitter. And so conservatives who apparently had a lot of bots following them, a lot of nefarious accounts following them, are now very upset because they notice that they've lost, allegedly, tens of thousands of followers in some cases. So Matt Gaetz, Republican representative who certainly enables Donald Trump in all the worst ways, was crying about it, saying that he started the day with 892,000 followers, and currently he's at 856,000 and dropping. And then he updated people following him with 842,000. Who cares? Who cares? Who cares? I don't. These people have power. They have power. Why do you care about your Twitter followers? The fact that people are so obsessed with this is actually what infuriates me more than anything. And in this context, it's Republican lawmakers who have engaged in some pretty terrible stuff. But I think people in general obsessing about their followers, who cares? Who cares? Twitter is not real life. It's just not. But
every time I see a congressperson who's got 7,000 followers, I'm like, woman of the people, man of the people. This person's actually trying to get stuff done, not just focused on this BS sort of celebrity nonsense world on Twitter. It's meaningless.
Log off. Do something with the position of power you have that's actually beneficial to the American people. Like, anyway, and my favorite is like when lawmakers are like, oh, someone should really do something about this awful thing that's happening in society. Yeah, you're a lawmaker, do something about it. Anyway, let me give you more. Matt Gaetz also complained by saying, I wish I could lose weight as fast as I'm losing followers on this Twitter purge. Mike Pompeo cried about it, saying this is how you create an echo chamber, except we already exist in these echo chambers. We already exist in these bubbles, so much so that the majority of Republican voters literally think that the election was stolen from Donald Trump, even though there's no evidence of widespread voter fraud. Like the fact that we can talk about that on a daily basis and provide all the updates and details about the failed court battles that were pursued by the Trump campaign. And these people don't know. Like Trump supporters legitimately don't know and they don't care because it's just not, they've been brainwashed by this right-wing media world into believing complete and utter lies to the point where they think they're patriots in engaging in this violent effort in the Capitol. Sarah Sanders also complained, I've lost 50,000 followers this week. Also, isn't it kind of embarrassing? Like, I would stop and think for a second, Francesca. Like, I would stop and think like, wait, do I want to announce to the world that I had like a bunch of bots and nefarious accounts following me? Like, do I want people to know that?
Yep. The brave men and bots, I mean women, who believe that this election was stolen, who believe that this election was stolen. Have I said that again? Oh God, it's my shadow account. It's my puppet accounts. Like, yes, stop telling on yourself, Nazis. I'm referring to everyone as Nazis today from now on. No, but stop telling on yourselves, you guys. And also, Anna's right. Like, you have actual power. This is the thing about folks getting upset that Trump was booted off of Twitter. First of all, the First Amendment does not protect your right to incite violence, number one. Number two, I'm pretty sure he's still the president and could give a press conference whenever he wanted. He could like call up Fox News, Rush Limbaugh. I think that guy's still got a show. I think all of these shows would love to have him on. He has the biggest mouthpiece and the biggest platform and bully pulpit, and it's not going anywhere, even if he's out of office. And like, let's just put this into perspective. All of these right wingers counting the numbers of Twitter followers lost, when in the real world, 370,000 and counting Americans are being lost, 4,000 a day.
Yep.
Stop it.
Yeah, they couldn't care. They couldn't care less about that. I mean, real human lives being lost, no, they're concerned about bots. That's what they're concerned about, because losing those bots on Twitter makes it appear that they're not as popular as they thought they were. That's what they're concerned about. It's disgusting. And by the way, one other thing that I want to mention. Republicans, of course, are giant hypocrites, and they're never consistent on anything. But when it comes to private businesses discriminating against the LGBTQ community, they'll argue it's a private business. It's a private business. They have the right. Okay, we're gonna fight to ensure that they can continue discriminating against people based on their gender identity or sexual orientation. But when it comes to a private company doing this audit to get rid of bots, oh my God, it's like we live in China now. This is an authoritarian state. What are we gonna do? No, it's embarrassing. These people are embarrassing. Sarah Huckabee Sanders crying about it. Jenna Ellis, a lawyer who's embarrassed herself enough, crying about it. I've lost 10,000 followers on Twitter's purge today. And to be clear, I personally don't want bots following me. Like, I want to know what my genuine Twitter count is. Like how many, but no, they would rather give people the illusion of popularity than know what the truth is. And then this is what they've cried about. You're so right, Francesca. They would rather cry about losing fake Twitter followers. They've done it more than sharing any compassion, any concern about the hundreds of thousands of Americans who have died during this pandemic. And I mean, I don't even know how many more are gonna die during this pandemic. But what I do know for a fact is that the Republican Party under Trump's leadership could not care less about those people or their families.
No.
They're too concerned about their, image and giving people this illusion of popularity.
And
Garbage.
I just want to add, in terms that they can understand it when it comes to this Twitter purge. Let's just put it in a language they get, which is that Jack just didn't want to bake you a cake. It's like on religious grounds. It's like a religious thing. So just you get that, right? Bye.
Plain as a vanilla. Yep, absolutely right. All right, post game is next. TYT.com/join to become a member, and we'll see you there.